Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us, Charlie Wyatt from The Sun and The Mirror's chief football writer, John Cross. Welcome to you guys. Right, let's quickly run you through the back pages then. The Telegraph with a picture of a delighted Lucas Mecha and a story from Matt Law there, detailing up to 8 departures from Chelsea, including Raheem Sterling. Onto the Eye, who say that Tarkowski is singing the blues after VAR controversy at Ellen Road. The Sun say Johan Wissa is doing an Isak after the latest development in his transfer saga. The Express report the same story as Wissa removes Brentford from his social media accounts. And the Metro describe Ruben Amorim's goalkeeper gamble. Ruben's keeper gamble. United greats urge boss Amorim to sign a new number one quickly before the transfer window closes, which is, 2 weeks today, John. It was a very sort of Manchester United under Sir Alex Ferguson press conference, wasn't it? His reaction to questions about Altay Bayindir's mistake, not the first mistake that Bayindir has made, which cost Manchester United in that game. How does this play out now with Mr. Donnarumma lurking in the wings available?
Well, I have to say, me and Charlie were both at Old Trafford yesterday, and I mean, the goalkeeping mistake was just so obvious. He just looks lost in the crowd of players. It was so reminiscent, and it was, of that game at Spurs in the League Cup last season. And basically, when I'm afraid to say, he didn't have a presence in that penalty box, and basically that's a weakness. He's clearly a good shot stopper, good reflex. Although you can always argue, of course, what should a professional goalkeeper be, but anything but a good shot stopper. But I just do feel that United are missing 2 key positions here. They're missing a good goalkeeper, perhaps as also a kind of an anchor man in midfield to kind of give them a balance in midfield. Someone can kind of keep up. But the goalkeeper, I think, is such a key issue now because Amorim has clearly taken a view on Onana, didn't even make the squad, wanted to try something different and done. And basically, I noticed that Wayne Rooney on his sort of kind of podcast was decrying that it would be crazy for United not to move for Donnarumma, who is obviously available at PSG and surplus to requirements. I think he's got his heart set on Manchester City, well stocked for goalkeepers. So basically, they've got loads, and United just need one. Look, I think I was really impressed in many ways with United. Yesterday, I like their new front three, but all of that good work is going to be undone unless they sign a top keeper, and basically that would make all the difference. On that paper, the Metro, they're using a picture of Emi Martinez, aren't they? Basically, obviously missed Villa's opener through suspension, but his actions towards the end of last season, he appeared to be saying farewell. So what does the future hold for him? I can't believe that Villa would want to entertain losing such a key player, but United have got to sign someone with real gravitas. They found money elsewhere to strengthen elsewhere. Honestly, I think they're going to have a hard season unless they sign a keeper of some note before the end of the transfer window.
Yeah. Charlie, let's talk about the story underneath the picture of Lucas Mecha in the Daily Telegraph. It's a Matt Law story, and it's Chelsea's 8-player exodus, the headline. Club would consider Sterling loan deal as part of mass exit. And let's not forget, they got money, and they've actually recouped a lot of money, Chelsea, haven't they, Charlie, this summer? Joao Felix went for 40-something million pounds to Saudi Arabia. But the story here says England international Sterling wants to stay in the Premier League, and the other names in the frame for either leaving on a loan deal or a permanent one: Nicholas Jackson, Christopher Nkunku, Axel Disasi, Renato Vega, Carney Chukwuemeka, Ben Chilwell, the list goes on. Tyreek George potentially as well. That's a lot of business to do in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, a lot of business to do. There's a lot of people at the Cobham training ground. And sometimes I wonder, where they all sit and get changed. Because, it is quite a big training ground there. It's not that big. And, while they've done quite well, as you say, in terms of getting some money in, they've just got to move these people out. They need some space in the car park. And, Raheem Sterling's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, he's had a terrible season at Arsenal. And, he needs to move again. And, I thought there was a bit of interest, I think, in some clubs in Italy. And I thought that may have really suited him, to be honest. If he wants to stay in the Premier League, But after last season, I'm not sure how many people would really want him, knowing how much he's probably going to cost in terms of wages and stuff. But yeah, as you say, Nicholas Jackson, obviously, there's a really good player there in Jackson. I still think so. It's obvious that some clubs want him. Ben Chilwell's got, he needs to kickstart his career. There's a World Cup, as we know, coming up, so he needs to try and get into that England squad. So yeah, plenty of business for Chelsea to do, and I'm sure they will. And it wouldn't surprise me if they still end up signing a few more players before the end of the window. Not that they really need them, but it wouldn't be a last few days of a transfer window if Chelsea didn't do something surprising.
Yeah. There are more names being linked, of course. Xabi Simons and Mr. Garnacho as well. John and Charlie will be back in a few minutes' time. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the stories in the morning's papers, including this in the Sun. Wissa does an Isak. Welcome back to Back Pages tonight. Charlie White from The Sun and John Cross from The Mirror with me for the next quarter of an hour or so. John, I want to go to you on the story in the Metro, right at the top of the Metro, above the Amorim feature there. And it says Romero in it for the long haul. This is great news, isn't it, for Tottenham's captain, Christian Romero, signing a long-term deal linked, wasn't he, with Atletico Madrid?
Yeah, it's massive, Will, honestly, because I think this is a fantastic stamp and seal of approval for Thomas Frank as manager. I really do. And it's fantastic news for Spurs and Spurs fans, because this is an absolute top player, brilliant player, World Cup winner, fantastic commanding centre-half, who it would be fair to say, I think, on his day is one of the best defenders, I think, in the Premier League. But he didn't have enough of those days when he allowed his mind and focus to wander, basically, because he did become distracted, I think. And there's no doubt about it. Last summer, I think he was unsettled, was probably looking to move. He was apparently sort of kind of heading towards the final 2 years this summer. And again, there was interest from Atletico Madrid, so it could have gone either way. And I just think for Romero then to commit himself, be given the captain's armband, commit himself until 2029, it really tells you the effect, I think, that Thomas Frank is having. It's very, very positive, feels good. I think he's getting the best football out of Romero, who looks a different animal altogether, I think, defensively, because he's absolutely tenacious and tigerish. I really like him when he defends and when he's at his best, because honestly, he's such a good defender when he's focused and his mind's there. And I do think when you consider his age, he's still sort of kind of mid-20s. It's really, Spurs have got a really good player there for the long term, and someone as captain who can anchor that defence and really take the club forward. A really strong day, I think, for Spurs.
Yeah. Your paper, Charlie, The Sun, Yo wants to go. Wissa does an Isak, toys thrown by B's star. You can see a picture of Alexander Isak in there as well. We'll talk about him in a minute. But particularly on Johan Wissa and this relationship with Brentford, it says it's turning toxic as he tries to force through a move. There we go. In this day and age, if you change your social media picture, it's game over, isn't it? It's just a black circle now and no mention of Brentford, no pictures of him in a Brentford shirt, Charlie.
Proper strop, hey? It seems to be going wrong for Brentford, doesn't it? And, a mass exodus, and it's going to be really tough for them, of course. Wissa wants out. He clearly wants a new challenge, and he'll probably get that move. It's been an incredible few seasons for Brentford. A wonderful journey. If they are able to stay up this season, it will be an absolute miracle. It really will, because it's going to be really tough for them. But certainly, I think it's pretty obvious that one player that's not going to be hanging around in West London is Wissa.
And your colleague at The Sun, Charlie, chief sports correspondent Dave Kidd, a piece inside the paper saying that that's a hell of a strike. Downing tools works, Charlie. He starts the piece by saying there's a reason why the National Union of Alexander Isak is down tools, hoping to stage a one-man Jarrow march to Anfield, and cites examples of it working in the past. And that's the modern day way as well now.
Yeah, Dave's gone through some. He's gone from Berbatov, Spurs to Man U, Sterling, Liverpool to City, Dimitri Payet, West Ham to Marseille, Costa, Chelsea to Atletico. So there's been a few. The one different part of this is, of course, that Isak, his employers, are basically, amongst the richest people on the planet. So even though he wants to leave, Liverpool, of course, have yet to come up with a satisfactory offer, and he's on a long contract. And Newcastle, I know most people believe there's no way back for Isak, and I certainly, cannot see him playing for Newcastle against Liverpool in 7 days' time. And even if he goes to Liverpool, I can't believe he'd be playing against Newcastle in 7 days' time either. But I think this one's going to drag. So this will be interesting. Most players, all players, generally get their way, and we've just mentioned Wissa, but this one is absolutely intriguing, and how the big bosses at Newcastle handle the situation.
Yeah, and look, the Newcastle fans, Crossy, most of them anyway, the ones that were at Villa Park, we can't repeat what they said, but they turned on Alexander Isak, you greedy so-and-so. And just going back to Dave Kidd's piece there, he says, should Isak make his Liverpool debut at St James's Park, which surely isn't going to happen, but it would be some spectacle. It would make Luis Figo's return to the Nou Camp after joining Real Madrid from Barcelona look like a teddy bear's picnic.
Yeah, it's a great line. Dave does come up with super kind of jokey one-liners, and that's a great one. I have to say, I don't find it very edifying. I don't think it's good for the game at all. I do think you've got a major issue with Isak, in that basically, this is a player who, if Newcastle had missed out on the final day of a Champions League place, I think a lot of people would be a little bit more understand. The fact of the matter is that basically he got into the Champions League by hook or by crook, just about, and then basically Isak has made his feelings plain. Liverpool have had an offer turned down, and I have to say, I've written something about it. I think a few other strikers and sort of kind of agents will look at that and go, well, not so sure about taking my player to Newcastle if they basically, kind of kick up a stink about keeping players. And that is your balance of player power. I just don't like it. I think Isak's been an absolute revelation. Newcastle been great for Alexander Isak, and I think it's such a shame when that gets lost. And I tell you what, Brentford have been even better for Johan Wissa. For this to play out like that, Wissa has become a really, really influential, really good Premier League player at Brentford. And I just think for him to kind of, sort of do that on his social media and knows exactly what he's doing. It's very, very directed. It feels bitterly unfair. And I think that's a really, really bad look. Kind of, at least Isak has, kept his counsel. I know Newcastle fans probably won't agree, but player power has always been there. But I have to say, when Isak, sort of kind of flexed his muscles, I'm afraid to say player power is well and truly back in vogue. And I'm afraid to say that will dictate transfers the next 2 weeks of the window, I think.
Yeah, and look, the very unromantic way of looking at it, in the PSR age that we now live in, will the Saudis think that, 140, 150 is just too much to turn down when it gets to another week down the line? Let's move on back to the Eye, Charlie. At the bottom of the Eye front page, under Tarkovsky trying to explain to Strack what was happening at Ellen Road. 3-day Forest spree nears £100 million mark with Kalimuendu signing. Of course, they brought in Amari Hutchinson, James McAtee, an exciting signing from Manchester City, and now Arno Kalimuendu, who actually had a really good season for Rennes in Ligue 1 last season, 23 years old. And I noticed Nuno last week was very much doom and gloom, talking about the season ahead and saying that they've got so much work to do. Well, they've kind of done that, haven't they, in a couple of days?
Yeah, I mean, even though he's doom and gloom, let's not forget where Nottingham Forest are. I don't think any of us would be thinking that they're going to be right down there at the bottom. Of course, they've got an exciting season in Europe coming up. Hutchinson will be really interesting. One for the future. He's got to be way more consistent than he was last season for Ipswich. At times, he was a bit disappointing. And as you say, they've signed a player who's coming over. He's got 40 goals in 100 games. So, exciting times. Forest will be absolutely fine this season, although I think it's obvious that they're going to find the pressures of playing in the Europa League quite tough. And, of course, this weekend against Crystal Palace is going to be absolutely fascinating. The atmosphere is going to be unbelievable. And I just wish I was going to be at that match, to be honest.
Yeah, John, let's talk about your piece in the Mirror in terms of what we've taken away from the opening weekend in the Premier League. What have we learnt, apart from the favourite three, the top three winning again and looking like the three?
Yeah, well, honestly, I love this challenge on a Monday. Basically, the paper sets the big debate and basically asks the writers, basically, what was your big takeaway? You know, a few people went sort of kind of, it was obvious that basically Liverpool were kind of going to be stronger than ever. But I just thought, you know what? I love the atmosphere. I did listen to the radio actually on Saturday afternoon. Love doing that. And basically, the atmosphere was absolutely fantastic. So loud, even coming through the airwaves, basically, from the Stadium of Light. They've signed a lot of players, but I picked out as my kind of big takeaway Sunderland as a really exciting force, led by Granit Xhaka as newly installed captain. It was a big, surprising move and switch to make. But I just think I really admire Xhaka for doing it because, sort of it's a last challenge, perhaps you could argue. Obviously, he's a big leader, big influence in the dressing room. A really super shrewd, smart signing. I think Forest are going sort of young, and I admire that. But basically, that works for them, and that's exciting times ahead. But I think for Sunderland, they perhaps needed a sort of an older general, and so I just picked out Xhaka as sort of kind of someone, and sort of Sunderland as something exciting. Charlie would mention it before. We cannot have this continual 3 up, 3 down. We need to break the cycle. And yes, I admit I did actually tip Sunderland to go down, but can I change that after Saturday? I think maybe it's a bit too soon to do that, but I did tip Leeds to stay up. And so Leeds have kind of sort of rewarded me with that. We're basically a big win tonight. I really hope, say, 2 of the 3 can stay up. I'm not sure Burnley can, to be honest, but it would be really nice, positive move for the Premier League. And it needs it, frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie, just on the Sun as well, top right corner, Bukayo Saka, not dressing up that win for Arsenal at Old Trafford by any means. Buck up, lads. Saka's demanded a massive improvement. You know, the quote that it was not a great performance. We're happy, of course, to come away from Old Trafford with a win, but we were not up to our usual standards. And that's spot on, isn't it? Right across the board for Arsenal.
No, absolutely. I mean, he's honest. And basically, he's saying we got away with it this time, but it won't always happen. And yeah, brilliant sort of 3 points for Arsenal to come away having not played that well against a team that was, much improved from last year. Let's not forget Arsenal have got Leeds this weekend, but they've got a really nasty opening 6 games, including Liverpool, including Manchester City, including Newcastle. So, they'll be under no doubt, that entire team, that they have to be much, much better in the coming month.
So, look, quick answers from both of you. Crossy, right on the spot after match week 1, now complete with Leeds' win. Title winners, the top 3 won.
Oh, Liverpool.
Oh, no hesitation from Cross.
No hesitation, but I do think that Manchester City will be back. I really, really like what Manchester City have done. And I think that basically the top 2 could easily be that kind of, those 2 moving away from the rest and a resumption of old hostilities. I do think United will have a decent season. Let's see what Arsenal's business does. But I really fancy a Liverpool Man City toe-to-toe title race, which would be good, which can be really good. Old hostilities, and Liverpool have signed a lot, City have signed a lot. Exciting season.
Charlie, one word for you, my friend.
Man City back in it.
What's that? No, I can't even count that, but yeah, we get the message. Big win for Manchester City. John, Charlie, thank you very much to you. Of course, if you missed any of the show, there's another chance to see Back Pages tonight at hour. And the show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget, of course, to join us on Tuesday night, when our guests will be the Times football writer Martin Hardy and Mail Sports football editor Ian Ladyman.